Hi, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Matt Parker. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Arcata. Today, I'm going to be talking about the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's consideration to reintroduce sea otters to Northern California and Oregon. This is work that was developed by a team of biologists in California and Oregon, including Lillian Carswell, Michelle St. Martin, and Michelle Zwarches. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is the only federal agency whose primary responsibility is the conservation and management of fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the American people. Sea otters are one of the few marine mammal species managed by the service. At this time, there is no formal proposal to reintroduce sea otters, and the service is only exploring that idea at this time. My goal for this presentation is to provide a brief overview of what the service is considering and to identify potential next steps. I'd like to begin by giving a little background of what happened to the sea otters that historically occupied our coastline. From the mid-1700s to late 1800s, the maritime fur trade resulted in the near elimination of sea otters throughout their range. By the time that protections were put in place by the first seal treaty in 1911, fewer than 2,000 sea otters remained, and these were scattered among 11 isolated populations. There are 3 subspecies of sea otter, 2 of which occur here in North America. This includes the northern sea otter, which ranges along sections of coastline from Alaska to northern Washington. 900 miles to the south is the southern sea otter. This occupies habitat between San Mateo and Santa Barbara counties, but historically occupied habitat between Baja and Oregon. The southern sea otter is a federally threatened species under the Endangered Species Act. And I would also like to acknowledge that 35% of the existing sea otter populations today are a result of translocation efforts. The service is considering the reintroduction of sea otters under the direction of Congress. In late 2020, a law was passed requesting that the service assess the feasibility of reintroducing sea otters to their historic range. This law identified that sea otters play a critical ecological role to the coastal environment as a keystone species, or a species that has an effect on its environment disproportionate to its abundance. This law also identified that sea otters had been removed from large areas of their historic range from fur traders and hunters. The feasibility assessment that Congress requested was published in 2022. It did determine that it would be feasible to reintroduce sea otters to Northern California and Oregon. To get to this conclusion, the team of biologists assessed the biological, socioeconomic, and legal feasibility of reintroducing sea otters, as well as the risk and potential costs. The feasibility assessment found that reintroducing sea otters would improve the conservation status of the species and would have specific benefits to the southern sea otter by enhancing its genetic diversity and expanding its range. The feasibility assessment also detailed that reintroducing sea otters would help with restoration of ecosystem functions in the nearshore marine ecosystem. This is because the sea otter, as a keystone species and generalist predator, consumes a huge volume of invertebrates daily. It can consume the equivalent of a quarter of its body weight daily, and it consumes a huge variety of species. Over 100 have been documented in their diet. Additionally, the sea otter can benefit the recovery of kelp through the consumption of sea urchins and has been shown to benefit seagrass habitats as well. The feasibility assessment outlined next steps and provided a potential framework if consideration was continued. The first step taken by the service was to conduct these 16 open house events along the proposed reintroduction range from northern Oregon to the Bay Area. One of these events occurred in Arcata. These events allowed people in coastal communities to come and have one-on-one interactions and conversations with the biologists who wrote the feasibility assessment. It was a great opportunity for the service to listen and learn about the opinions and concerns of coastal community members. Outreach events continue to be ongoing. Updates are posted onto the service's website. After community engagement, the next steps for considering sea otter reintroduction will be to identify potential reintroduction sites. There's no sites have been selected at this time, but a modeling effort is currently underway, assessing numerous variables, including threats, habitat, suitable habitat, human presence, industry, and other variables as well. The feasibility assessment acknowledged that estuaries should be considered for potential sites owing to the fact that they can shelter sea otters from certain threats like great white sharks. As I mentioned, no sites have been selected, but it's possible that Humboldt Bay, as a large estuary on the Pacific coast, could be identified for further consideration. One of the biggest concerns that we heard from stakeholders doing these open house events was the potential impacts to the shellfish industry. The service is currently investigating traditional and innovative mitigation measures that could potentially benefit individuals in these affected industries if sea otters were reintroduced. Finally, once the potential sites are identified, a comprehensive socioeconomic impact study will be carried out, focused on those specific areas. Sea otter reintroduction, or the consideration to reintroduce sea otters, is in its infancy. There are many steps that would need to be taken before a formal proposal could be drafted. If you'd like to stay informed, we encourage people to sign up for updates on our website. That QR code you see on your screen can navigate you there. We'd also love to hear from anybody in the coastal communities who have comments or suggestions. You can find this website on our website as well and send comments there, and that will allow you to, again, have the engagement with the biologist leading this effort. Happy to address any questions at this time.
So are the if we do see otters in the ocean, they're probably river otters, not sea otters.
Yes, so our river otters there are occurrences of our river otters going in. There have been rare occasions where a sea otter has been verified with photos in Humboldt Bay. I think there was one record in 2015. More often than not, though, it'd be a dispersing individual from the southern sea otter population. But yes, we don't have sea otters on our coastlines. Oregon also does not have sea otters on their coastline. They were removed. I think the last records in Oregon were the early 1900s.
I mean, if the sea otters would eat urchins,
They do.
how do they benefit the seagrass?
So sea otters do consume urchins. That's one of their most recognized beneficial ecological benefits that they can provide to coastal ecosystems, and that therefore benefits the kelp. In the seagrass habitat, they can help restore, protect it. They kind of stir up the seagrass beds. They do a lot of harvesting of the invertebrates in there, and there are numerous studies that show that they do have benefits to those habitats.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for this. I guess I'm curious. I'm excited about this. And I know there's been kind of past efforts to reintroduce sea otters that have been unsuccessful. But I'm hopeful for this one. So I guess I'm curious in your feasibility study if you saw anything this time that was kind of different from past efforts that might give you kind of hope for success in this effort.
Well, again, just to be clear, no proposals drafted, but the best thing from learning about past experiences is that you can learn what happened and study those and incorporate those into future potential efforts. And again, as I alluded to at the beginning or near the beginning of the slides and presentations, 35% of the established populations today are a result of translocation efforts. So there have been numerous efforts that actually have resulted in sea otter population establishment in their historic range.
Yes, to what extent did the Russian American Fur Company take sea otters off of our local coast out here prior to, say, the discovery by the bay by the Russian American Fur Company in 1806.
The history is, from my understanding, that fur trade resulted in the near extirpation of the sea otters. And, the estimations of the historical population on the Pacific coast was approximately 300,000 individuals, and that was reduced to 2,000. And that's attributed to the maritime fur trade effort.